Alright, like, click, subscribe, do all that. You know what time it is. It's Netflix time. This movie's called Midnight Special. When his son exhibits supernatural powers, a father takes the youngster on a run to protect them from the government, authorities, and religious fanatics. So this movie came out 2016. It's an hour 51 minutes long. It's one of those sci-fi action adventure films. Spoiler alert, let's get it. So we got this state trooper named Lucas, a guy by the name of Roy, and his son Alton. Now apparently, as the news reports go, he kidnapped his son from the government. Now how can he kidnap his own son from people that shouldn't have him in the first place, right? Well, it turns out he somehow knows something about some coordinates the government didn't want to get out. But how did this 8-year-old boy come across these coordinates? Well, anyway, as they're making a getaway, he gets Alton to read his comics. Turns out the lady at the hotel called it in and told him about the driver's license and coordinates or whatever. License plate. And they're basically on the run again. So while Lucas is driving, he basically cuts all the lights off with his night vision goggles on so he can see. Meanwhile, at this ranch, this guy sitting down is the pastor of the ranch. And he wants this guy to bring Alton back because apparently he's their savior. Apparently Roy and Alton visited his ranch a while ago. But why do they think Alton is their savior? Later on he preaches a sermon, but all of a sudden the FBI shows up. Apparently this ain't no quote-unquote normal kidnapping if you got the FBI, SWAT team, and special forces involved. While they're loading all these religious fanatics on a bus, Lucas and them are still making their getaway. But as they turn the lights back on, they almost hit a car sitting in the middle of the road. This other truck, however, does not avoid the car. Lucas goes and checks on the lady to make sure she's okay, but she looks pretty much dead. A cop comes, they wave down the cop to make sure everything's all good and gravy. Tells about the situation, like she's got a bad head wound or whatever. He's like, alright, cool. But as he's going back to the car, he notices the license plate of their car. Oh shit. He's like, look man, don't call it in, go about your business. Then he pulls out a shotgun telling him to get back in the car, but he's only making the situation worse. As Lucas is talking to Roy, the cop reaches for his gun, but Lucas bangs off on him, done deal, dead. He grabs his microphone and makes the call about the officer being down, and that's when we figure out he used to be a state trooper too. And then them niggas roll out. Meanwhile, the FBI's got all these religion fanatics lined up for questioning. Then the FBI agent gets the priest in the room. He's like, for somebody that owns a ranch and is a preacher, you sure have a limited supply of firearms. But he just simply responds, I don't see how that's illegal. He says, besides, he's got to protect his ranch. Then enters an analyst by the name of Paul. He talks about how his sermons, if you say them backwards, contain government information that is literally impossible to comprehend. But somehow Alton made it referably easy to figure out. Now they know he doesn't know anything about it, but he's their best shot at looking for the whereabouts of Alton. Meanwhile, Lucas and them drive to this guy named Eldon's house, and they're gonna stay there for the night. Apparently, Eldon used to be part of the ranch too. After Roy puts Alton to sleep, they go back and check the news, realizing it's worldwide now. So apparently his son is getting sicker day by day. He has like 3 days to get to this certain location. They say he's not taking him to the hospital or anything like that. Roy asks Eldon if he misses the ranch. He's like, yeah, I do. But he knows he can't go back for personal reasons. Next day, Roy and Lucas wake up to the house shaking, lights breaking, and we're like, okay, what the fuck is going on? They hit Alton's room and we see a beam of light coming from Alton's eyes to Eldon's. I was like, what the fuck is happening? While that's going on, the foundation of the house is breaking apart. Roy smacks Eldon in the back of the head with a lamp, and we don't really know what's happening to Alton. All we know is that he's in pain. He comforts his son, calms him down. So at this point, we're trying to figure out what the hell just happened. Meanwhile, Paul's talking to all these fanatics, and they're pretty much saying things like he's our savior, we know about the blinding light, the breaking of light bulbs, destruction of property and whatnot. But March 6th is supposed to be an important day, but we don't really know why. But other than that, they mostly give us all the same information. After they finish questioning, they all get everybody together on a bus, and they just drop them off in a certain area. The guy supposed to go looking for him gets this bag, and then they head on out. Like I said, Alton get weaker, but we don't really know why, and he's refusing to eat. Roy speaks to Eldon, and he's like, man, come on, you knew better than to do that shit. But he said he just had to see it one more time. See what? Roy's like, look, man, you know where we're going, and we can't have you saying nothing. As he's pulling out his gun. Yeah, that's the last time we see Eldon. He got da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I ain't gonna lie, that shot of the sky looks awesome. So when the religious fanatics were talking, they were saying his mom abandoned him. That wasn't really the case, but I'll explain that later. Anyway, they head to a gas station. Roy tells Alton to stay in the car and read his comic books. But for some reason they were in the store, Alton decided to get out the car. He looked up into the sky and you seen something coming down. And while Roy was making a phone call, this lady comes up to him like, hey, you lost or something? Roy sees it, gets off the phone, he's like, hey, he's with me. Then after she leaves, he's like, you cannot leave the car. You have to know what's at stake here. But then we look up to the sky, we're like, what the fuck is that coming down? They're like comets or meteors. It's like, what the fuck? Then all of a sudden it starts hitting the gas station. It's like, oh boy. So they get in the car and haul ass. So it's a bunch of meteors or comets that just happen to be hitting the gas station of all just one spot, right? Has to have something to do with Alton, right? And his ears and noses start bleeding. So that's one of the reasons why Roy always puts earmuffs on him, and obviously you know the reason why he puts goggles on him. So then we get this lady by the name of Sarah. Come to find out, she's actually Alton's mom. And that's who Roy was on the phone with at the gas station. Turns out she never abandoned Alton. Some guy took Alton away from him for like 2 years, and Roy had to sit back and watch and wait for his moment. After Sarah put him to the bed, they had to come up with a game plan. Because obviously they're not going to be able to stay there forever, they're on the run. Meanwhile, these guys is looking for Alton too. Turns out what's in their bag, they got guns. and they end up knocking on somebody's door. Turns out they turn up in front of Sarah's mom's house, obviously to get information. Next thing we see is Paul's in a helicopter and meets up with the FBI chief at the gas station. Come to find out it wasn't meteors or comets. It was actually a satellite that was broken up in space and it crashed to the ground. Alton knew the cops were on him, and he actually had the mind control power to destroy the satellite while it was in space. What in all of the fuck? Now I'm more convinced Alton's not even a person. I think he's a thing. The government's convinced he's some type of ultimate weapon. They're still watching the news getting ready to roll out again. And Sarah doesn't really know Lucas like that, so she's like, well, why are you even helping for this? And Lucas says him and Roy grew up as best friends back in the day. He said he knew him even before that he went to the ranch. So after they talk, they get the van ready, park it behind back. Alton's strength is not holding up, he's getting weaker by the day. But he's convinced he has to get to this spot by March 6th. But at this point in the next couple days. But the other dudes is hot on their trail and they're already at Sarah's house and they found out what car they're driving. Especially now because they left the van in the driveway. Then all of a sudden they pull the van over because Alton's coughing, he can't even breathe. He says he's good, but then all of a sudden his eye starts flickering again. It's like, oh shit. Then the car just gets like dumb bright. They get into a little beef at first because Lucas is like, man, just take him to the hospital. He's like, you can't take him there. So they gotta get off the main road. Lucas and Sarah get back in the car. Alton tells Roy to follow him into the woods because he can tell that the cops are on his trail. By the helicopters and the satellites in the sky, it's crazy. So basically they go through the woods and they sleep there for the night. And he's looking real bad at this point. Meanwhile, Paul's looking at all these coordinates trying to figure out exactly where they're going. Most of them thought they was going to Atlanta, but he's like, nah, that's not it. And I guess somehow he figured it out. Apparently the next place they go is Mr. Eldon's house. And apparently Roy didn't kill him. But these guys will for sure if they don't tell them what they need to know. Lucas and Sarah still watching the news waiting for Alden and Roy to come back or meet them at their location. Meanwhile, Alden convinces Roy he needs to stay up in the daytime even though Roy knows the daytime will kill him, or he thinks he knows. So he holds on to him while Alden watches the sunrise. And something surprising happens. As a whole force field engulfs them out of nowhere, Lucas and Sarah wake up the next morning and hear a knock at the door. It's Alden and Roy, and Alden's just fine. He tells him he saw the sunrise this morning and he figured out who he is now. He doesn't really go into detail, but I think he's trying to tell us that he's an alien. He tells him it's a world built on top of ours and other people live there. Then he forms this light in his hand. My guess is what people were seeing when he was connected with the blue light is this other world that people saw, hypothetically speaking. So they're about to head out again, and just as Lucas is heading out the door, Lucas gets caught off guard and gets a shotgun blast to the chest. It's this nigga, he found them. It's a damn shootout, but they kidnap Alton and tie everybody up. Once they get away, Sarah finds a knife in Lucas's boot and they untie themselves, and the chase is on. They get off the highway, but there's army and law enforcement everywhere. Then they see the truck that the guys were in, but nobody was in there, and I gotta say, a helicopter came through and picked up whoever's in the truck. So yeah, the government's got him now. Now they're feeling down the dumps like they're never gonna get Alton back. He's walking over towards the road like he about to commit suicide or some shit. Then they got him in his room. Then they got a child development counselor answering all these questions, like he's really gonna talk to any of them. But the only person he wants to talk to is Paul, but only if everybody left the room. Now as you can see, Alton's standing up, but on the computer looks like he's sitting down. He's actually controlling the shit. Totally convinced now this guy's an alien. And now Paul's in the room with Alton. Alton actually needs a favor from Paul. Basically to get him out of here and take him to the spot that he was trying to get to in the first place. Phone's ringing off the hook, Roy picks up the phone, and it's Paul. He tells him the coordinates that he needs to get to, and tells him to be there within 3 hours. They're going to his car. He unlocks the car and turns it on with his mind. I'm like, hell, if he could do all that, he might as well just drive the car, right? Meanwhile, while all that was going on, FBI's power was shut down just long enough for Alton to get away, which just recently cut back on. Roy and everybody gets to the location. Paul drops off Alton. Paul borrows some handcuffs from Lucas. He gotta make it look like they stole the kid from him, you know what I'm saying? They get under the bridge and put a vest on him. And he's like, you must be prepared to realize that this might be the last time you ever see me. And yeah, it sucks, but he knows. Family hug. Roy tells Lucas like, man, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. Lucas is like, fuck that, I'm all the way in, let's get it. Anyway they go, it's gonna be a barricade, but Alton tells him going down that way is less police. So they bust through that shit. They get ready for the chasing. They turn on a random street to lose the police. And it just happens to be in the area that he needs to be in. So while Alden and Sarah go to the location, Roy and Lucas steer the police away. So Alden finally gets to the location. All of a sudden his eyes and hands start glowing. Then we get this big atomic explosion. And next thing you know, it's a whole other city behind him. I really don't even know exactly how to describe this. As it's going on, Roy's car is completely fucked. The wheels falling off. And they see the patterns of the city. That's how far this stretches. Another part of it within the trees. People are seeing these elements from all over the state. My question is, what kind of alien city is it? And quite honestly, I still don't know. And then while that's going on, Sarah sees all these bright life forms that are literally popping out of nowhere from the forest to the buildings. It's crazy. He says goodbye to his mom, and then in one fell swoop, the city is gone and so is he. Yeah, that shit's a trip. Roy flipped the car over, but him and Lucas are still alive. Later on, Lucas ends up talking to the evaluation counselor. He tells him the whole story. Apparently, Alton and Sarah are missing. Now, we know why Alton's gone, but how did Sarah just disappear off the radar? Then he decides to bring in another counselor that'll help. They end up bringing in Paul. So I'm guessing he's going to be semi-good right now. As far as Sarah goes, she went on the run. Who knows where she's at. As far as Roy goes, they locked him up with wires on his head. I thought he would have been in a mental institution explaining his story, but it turns out he's really in jail. And the last scene shows him staring up looking at the sky. Okay, so Alton was basically an alien. My question is, why do you have to wait till March 6th to go to a certain spot? Was that the date the rest of his kind was just gonna be there? It's not like they were just meeting him there. He had the power to call onto a whole new world and shit. Did the other aliens talk to him to confirm that they was gonna be there? It's like, so many questions. Midnight Special on Netflix. Check it out. Like, click, subscribe, do all that. You already know what time it is. Slick DZ, all DZ, Mr. Big, you the goddamn slogan.